now on the Copenhagen Optimization stand and joined by Kasper, who can tell us a little bit about the way, well, essentially you're making airports run better, run more smoothly, aren't you? Give me the overview of that.
Yeah, so what we do is really, we have our Better Airport solution, which essentially touches the passenger flow, the baggage flow, and the aircraft flow. And what we want is to connect those as good as we can, which for us starts with a forecast. How many passengers are we going to get? How many bags are we going to get? How many aircraft are we going to get? In various different locations. And then we use that when we, for instance, plan check-in. We say, okay, how many passengers are actually going to check in a bag? Which then differs from the more classical way of doing it. Well, it's a rule of thumb, it's a 320, I'll give it 4 counters.
And that's important, is it, that your best guess is not a best guess, it's a really well thought out, algorithmically backed best guess.
Correct. Like we really want to go away from the guessing and move more into data. I mean, we suck in a lot of data into our platform, and then we want to take the kind of gut feeling away from this and say, well, the data tells us this. So we've looked at your flight for the last 12 months, you only have 40 bags on the flight. So we're not going to give you 4 counters because you only have 40 passengers checking in out of your 200 that are in the aircraft.
So we're talking about sort of saving time, saving money, making it more efficient, better experience for passengers. What's the main driver, do you think, when you're talking to airports about your solution and saying, this is the big difference it can make to your operation?
I think there's definitely a kind of a speed with which they can make these plans and the way of automating. So we're moving it from manual to automation. That's a big plus for whoever's using it. The business case then on the side of the airport is to say, well, if we take security as an example, if we can save 5 to 10%, which is what we consistently do, out of a security budget of 2,000 staff, well, that's a lot of money. Like, do the math, that's pretty easy. We're not charging for 100 FTE for our software, right? I think what we've seen on the back end of COVID is all infrastructural projects were put on hold in most airports globally, and now traffic is back. And now these projects are coming back to life, but even if they had all the money in the world, they cannot build that fast. So we're also really like sweating the assets, so making the most of it, right? And then saying, how can we do that? Well, by allocating 3 counters instead of 4, and it still works.
So let's have a look at, you can show us I think a demonstration kind of at least of how it looks. So it's interesting you're talking about life coming back after COVID. This is the forecasting screen. Talk me through it, but you're sort of forecasting back at full pace, I guess, but now COVID's passed and people are really wanting to come through the airports.
Correct. So what we get in here is basic flight schedule details. Then what we forecast is the load factor. So essentially, how many passengers are going to be on this flight when it leaves. And if we then kind of click on a flight, and this is kind of where it's really important, is these passengers can go to a number of different areas, right? Okay, someone checking in, this is a Terminal 1 flight, they could go to fast track or general screening. If I click here, we know for this one flight, here's how we expect passengers to arrive. All this runs more or less automatically once it's set up. So the trick is in setting it up in the right way. And then what we really do, and coming back to this one, is we have all these other modules, and that's where we very actively are using this forecast. So for us, the forecast itself is a means to an end. It's not an end result. Okay, I'm going to have 1,200 passengers tomorrow at 8 to 9. Okay, well, what does that mean? Are you ready or are you not ready? So one example of this is to look at check-in, for instance. So in the check-in solution, this is an example of a common use self-service backdrop. And we're then looking at, well, based on how passengers are arriving, we can see the screen line up here. How many counters do I then actually need to open? And these red bars indicate, okay, tomorrow morning, well, if I only have 8 counters, I'm going to have a lot of passengers queuing outside the queue maze. So that's essentially what the red tells us. Yeah. So that's some of what we then help the airport say, okay, can we do something about that? Could we get more staff, less staff? But also in airports today, a lot would say, well, I'm allocating all of these counters to that one airline, maybe over the day. Instead, say, oh, yeah, I have space here, so I could take another flight and put it in here, right?
So when you look at it here, it paints a really clear picture from, as you say, from people sort of going, our best guess, we should probably open 4 or 5 counters. Here you can see, well, that's either the right or the wrong choice to make. It's very clear.
Yeah, you say it's clear. I think a lot of what we do also has to do with change management. So this is a different way of doing it, because a lot of airports today, if you take check-in, Well, they'll do a seasonal allocation and say, okay, before the summer, here's how we're going to do it, run with it. What we are introducing here is daily, and this is in the hand of a terminal manager who'll be using this plan on the day to say, okay, what's happening? The red line is right here, right now. Okay, what if Air New Zealand to Auckland is going to be delayed? Can I extend this counter? Do I need to move this somewhere else? Very interactively on the day with the plan, and really putting the airport back in control of their infrastructure.
And so this data, it seems hugely powerful. Can it be used for, I guess, airport design, airport expansion? You sort of say, this tells you whether your current infrastructure is working, but of course it also says, if you had a different infrastructure or a more flexible infrastructure, you could do things even better.
Yeah, so I have a pass from Copenhagen Airport, and when I was there, we had one tool for capacity planning, one for tactical, and one for day off, and there was never a handshake. So I could sit and do capacity planning and say, hey, everything in check-in is fine, and the terminal manager could say, Kasper, it's not fine, come and look, right? I have no more counters. So what we've done with this one is to say, our number one goal, we need to be able to plan tomorrow. Using the same methodology, we could plan 9 months out. We can plan 20 years out. And that philosophy is one that a lot of the airports are really buying into and saying, this makes a lot of sense. Of course, how we plan tomorrow, why should the methodology in 20 years be different? What differs is, well, in 20 years, you can play Lego and just say, hey, give me 4 more counters. Okay, here's 4 more counters. Give me 3 more stands. Okay. Give me a schedule, and then they sit in the sandbox and play around while day off is still running.
Really interesting. Kasper, thank you so much for talking us through it.